When we think about kindness, we often imagine it as an undeniable good, an essential virtue that brings light into the lives of both the giver and the receiver. Kindness makes the world feel a little softer, more connected, and full of understanding. It's a quality that elevates relationships, opening doors to trust, compassion, and mutual respect. In so many cases, kindness really does act as a bridge, forging connections and creating a sense of goodwill that brings people together. Acts of kindness remind us of our shared humanity, sparking moments of warmth and solidarity that feel increasingly rare in a fast-paced, often self-focused world. In fact, kindness can go beyond individual acts to shape entire communities, creating environments where people feel seen, appreciated, and valued. Small gestures, a smile, a helping hand, an encouraging word, can ripple outward, setting off a chain reaction of positivity that strengthens the bonds within families, friendships, workplaces, and neighborhoods. When practiced with awareness and thoughtfulness, kindness is a powerful force that not only uplifts the spirit but also promotes a collective sense of belonging. It reminds people that they're not alone, that there is someone willing to lend support, and that kindness itself is something they too can pass along. Yet despite all these benefits, kindness is not without its complexities. There is an assumption that being kind can do no wrong, that giving generously, listening compassionately, and helping others will inevitably result in positive outcomes. But kindness, like any other virtue, needs balance. Without self-awareness, the very quality we cherish can sometimes lead us down paths that aren't as beneficial as we might think. Sometimes what we view as kindness can inadvertently cause harm, not only to ourselves, but to others as well. When kindness becomes automatic, unexamined, or based on impulse rather than intention, it can create consequences that contradict its very purpose. Stoicism, a philosophy that prizes rational thinking and clear judgment, teaches us to question even our most positive impulses. It's not about dismissing kindness or seeing it as a weakness, but about applying discernment to understand when kindness is genuinely helpful and when it may unintentionally become a source of suffering or dependency. This approach urges us to pause, reflect, and consider the broader impact of our actions. Stoicism reminds us that every virtue, including kindness, requires thoughtfulness. It's not enough to be kind. We must ask ourselves if our kindness is truly serving others, or if it's creating unintended consequences that we may later regret. When we look more deeply into the effects of kindness, we see that its impact isn't always as straightforward as it appears. While kindness can build people up, too much of it, or kindness given without boundaries, can also weigh them down, robbing them of opportunities for growth, resilience, and self-sufficiency. If we give without regard for our own needs or fail to respect our own limits, kindness can leave us feeling drained and disillusioned. This isn't to suggest that kindness should be avoided. Rather, it invites us to practice kindness with intention, discernment, and balance. One of the most surprising ways kindness can backfire is by making us overly available to others. If we consistently go out of our way to help at every request, we can quickly become the go-to person for any problem, big or small. While being helpful sounds noble, this habit can lead to burnout. Imagine a person who says yes every time a friend needs a favor or a colleague asks for help. Over time, this willingness may cause them to neglect their own priorities, feeling drained and overwhelmed. And for those who depend on them, it creates an expectation of constant availability, where they become reluctant to manage things on their own. In this way, kindness can diminish both our personal well-being and the independence of those we support. Sometimes kindness blinds us to other people's true intentions. When we extend ourselves generously, we tend to assume others will do the same. But, unfortunately, not everyone has the same values or intentions. There are people who might take advantage of kindness to manipulate or exploit us. This might be a friend who borrows money without intending to pay it back, or a co-worker who continually asks for help on projects, only to take full credit later. By constantly giving them the benefit of the doubt, we reinforce this behavior, encouraging them to use us as a resource rather than respecting our boundaries. This is an example where kindness can cost us more than we initially realize, leaving us vulnerable to repeated manipulation. Another pitfall of kindness is when it leads to self-sacrifice at the expense of our own needs. People who have a natural inclination to be kind can often find themselves putting others first in every situation. While there's merit in helping others, constantly placing our needs last can be self-destructive. It can mean sacrificing our health, neglecting our goals, or losing sight of our identity. Over time, this becomes unsustainable. Those who always prioritize others might wake up one day feeling empty or resentful, as if they've lost a part of themselves. Stoicism would remind us to care for others without abandoning our own well-being, a balance that kindness, when unchecked, can disrupt. Kindness can also, surprisingly, lead us to dishonesty. When we care deeply about not hurting others, we might choose to avoid necessary confrontation. Maybe we refrain from giving a friend constructive criticism, or avoid telling a family member a difficult truth because we don't want to cause them distress. But by sparing someone from an uncomfortable truth, we're not helping them grow or face reality. This kind of kindness, though well-intentioned, can hinder growth both in ourselves and in those we're trying to protect. Stoicism encourages us to have courage in truthfulness. Yet kindness often tempts us to tell only half-truths, leading to a cycle of avoidance and dishonesty. There's also the issue of dependency. Constant acts of kindness can create a sense of reliance in others that stifles their own resilience. Picture a parent who is endlessly kind to their child, solving every problem and shielding them from all challenges. This approach, though rooted in love, can prevent the child from learning independence. In adulthood, this kind of over-accommodating kindness can lead to relationships where one person feels dependent on the other to make decisions or provide emotional stability. Instead of strengthening others, our kindness can sometimes hinder their growth, leaving them less capable and more reliant on external support. One subtle way kindness sabotages us is by clouding our sense of justice. Stoicism highly values justice as a virtue, urging us to treat others fairly and rightly. However, in an attempt to be kind, we sometimes allow ourselves to overlook unfair situations. Perhaps we let a friend take advantage of our generosity repeatedly, or we stay silent when someone crosses our boundaries, all in the name of keeping the peace. This tolerance, however, can be harmful because it signals that mistreatment is acceptable. In striving to avoid conflict, we might actually contribute to injustice, which does neither ourselves nor others any favors. Kindness can also become a way of controlling situations and people around us. Often, people who are overly kind do so with an unspoken expectation. They hope that by giving so much, they will be appreciated, or that their relationships will remain harmonious. Yet when kindness comes with strings attached, it creates an imbalance. If others fail to reciprocate or meet our expectations, resentment builds. This desire for control through kindness can lead to disappointment, frustration, and misunderstandings. Stoicism teaches us to release our attachments and accept things as they are. But a misguided kindness often tempts us to hold on tightly, hoping that by giving, we can steer others' behavior. Lastly, kindness can mask our true intentions and emotions. Many people use kindness as a way to avoid dealing with their own deeper feelings or insecurities. Instead of addressing their own needs, they focus on the needs of others, staying busy with acts of service. This might look noble, but it often stems from an avoidance of self-reflection. When we're constantly outwardly focused, we might ignore areas in our own life that need attention or healing. By shifting the focus away from ourselves, we might feel a temporary sense of satisfaction. But in the long run, we're avoiding personal growth and emotional honesty. Kindness is powerful, and when wielded with awareness, it enhances life in beautiful ways. But if we're not careful, our acts of kindness can lead to self-neglect, misplaced expectations, and even harm to others. Embracing kindness with discernment allows us to give meaningfully without losing ourselves or enabling harmful patterns in others. Kindness, though often thought of as purely positive, can also become a silent trap, leading us down paths we never intended. Another way kindness can sabotage us is by pulling us away from our own values and principles in order to avoid conflict. We might hold certain beliefs or standards, but in an attempt to be agreeable, we soften our stance or pretend to be indifferent. Imagine someone who values honesty but chooses to overlook a friend's manipulative behavior to avoid causing discomfort. Over time, this compromise chips away at our own integrity. We begin to feel uneasy, as if we're betraying ourselves by allowing actions we inherently disagree with. This form of kindness isn't rooted in compassion, but rather in a reluctance to stand firm, and it leads us to feel disconnected from who we are. The Stoics taught that living with integrity means aligning our actions with our principles. When kindness becomes a reason to disregard our values, we lose the grounding that keeps us steady. Furthermore, kindness often compels us to shoulder responsibilities that aren't ours to bear. Think of a situation at work where someone repeatedly takes on extra tasks to help a colleague. At first, it might seem like a generous gesture, one that builds team spirit, but over time, this constant self-sacrifice can lead to imbalance, where one person is doing the heavy lifting while others grow comfortable with doing less. Not only does this burden us, but it can also prevent others from fully embracing their own roles and responsibilities. What started as an act of kindness evolves into an unsustainable dynamic, where one person feels increasingly overwhelmed and others remain oblivious to their lack of contribution. This isn't just about workload, it reflects a deeper problem. When we overextend ourselves out of kindness, we indirectly signal to others that their efforts aren't necessary, that they can rely on us to step in. Ironically, our well-intended actions can erode a sense of accountability, creating an environment where people expect others to carry their weight. Then there's the tendency for kindness to make us overly forgiving, even when forgiveness isn't merited. When we constantly brush off other people's mistakes or wrongdoings, we tell ourselves it's because we're being understanding. But there's a thin line between understanding and enabling. For instance, in relationships, there are times when people let hurtful words or inconsiderate behavior slide because they want to be compassionate. They think everyone has flaws and avoid confrontation. However, this repeated forgiveness can create a toxic loop where the other person never has to face consequences for their actions. Over time, they come to expect tolerance and begin to take advantage of it. This form of kindness, then, is actually a disservice to both parties. One person avoids accountability, while the other sacrifices their own dignity, eroding the relationship's foundation of respect. Stoicism encourages forgiveness, but only when it's paired with wisdom. Forgiveness without discernment can lead to cycles of mistreatment, where kindness shields harmful behavior from change. Another dimension to consider is how kindness can make us hesitant to say no. This inability to set boundaries can have wide-ranging effects on our time, energy, and mental well-being. Saying yes to everyone can make us feel useful and appreciated. But if we agree to everything, we lose control over our own life. We might find ourselves spending evenings working on tasks we didn't want to take on, or attending events that drain us rather than energize us. Each yes given out of kindness chips away at the time we could have spent pursuing our own passions, relaxing, or focusing on self-care. Over time, this habit can lead to resentment, not just toward others, but also toward ourselves for not protecting our own space. Stoic wisdom reminds us that setting boundaries is not selfish. It's necessary for a balanced life. Yet kindness, in its eagerness to please, can trick us into thinking that every no is a rejection rather than a reasonable assertion of our own needs. Sometimes kindness can also make us overly sentimental, blurring our judgment. When we are kind-hearted, we may view people through an idealistic lens, choosing to see only the good in them and ignoring red flags. This optimism, while beautiful, can become dangerous if it keeps us tied to relationships that are harmful or draining. Imagine a person who stays close to a friend who repeatedly undermines their confidence or belittles them. They tell themselves he's just going through a hard time or she doesn't really mean it. In doing so, they allow themselves to be treated poorly, all because their kindness persuades them to ignore reality. Stoicism, however, advises us to see people as they are, not as we wish they would be. By holding on to an overly sentimental view of people, we risk becoming blind to the truth, letting kindness cloud our perception and keep us in toxic situations. Another hidden danger of kindness is that it can give us a false sense of identity. Many people define themselves by their acts of kindness, seeing their value only through the lens of what they can give others. While helping others can indeed be a source of joy and purpose, it's not the sole foundation of our worth. When we tie our identity too closely to kindness, we risk becoming dependent on others' needs for our sense of self. This can create a pattern where we need people to need us. Instead of focusing on our growth and self-fulfillment, we focus on being the helper, constantly seeking out people or situations to fix. This dependency isn't genuine kindness, it's a distraction from self-reflection. Stoicism encourages us to find our identity within ourselves, not from others' approval. But kindness, if we're not mindful, can push us to seek validation externally, leaving us disconnected from our own core. Finally, kindness can sabotage us by creating a false sense of peace. Many people use kindness as a way to avoid conflict, seeking harmony at all costs. This avoidance, however, can mean we're constantly pushing down our own feelings, pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Over time, these unspoken grievances can accumulate, creating a simmering resentment beneath the surface. Perhaps a partner consistently overlooks our needs, or a friend habitually takes more than they give. Out of kindness, we might stay silent, telling ourselves that voicing these concerns would disrupt the peace. Yet this kind of false peace isn't sustainable. It's merely a cover over unresolved issues that will eventually resurface. Stoicism values inner peace, but it is a peace built on honesty and self-respect, not on avoidance. When kindness becomes a way to dodge difficult truths, it leads us to a fragile, temporary harmony that can collapse with the smallest of provocations. In each of these ways, kindness can take on a double-edged quality. It's a powerful force, but only when wielded with discernment and wisdom. True kindness isn't about giving endlessly, nor is it about avoiding discomfort or controlling outcomes. It's about extending genuine care while maintaining balance, honoring both others and ourselves. Without this awareness, what we consider kindness can morph into a burden, pulling us away from our principles and peace of mind. By staying mindful of these potential pitfalls, we can transform kindness into a virtue that uplifts rather than one that sabotages. Another surprising way kindness can undermine us is by fostering unrealistic expectations in our relationships. When we habitually go above and beyond for others, we might unconsciously start expecting the same in return. Yet, the reality is that not everyone will mirror our level of generosity or attentiveness. This unspoken expectation often leads to disappointment when others don't reciprocate in the way we'd hoped. We might feel let down or taken for granted, even though we initially gave out of our own free will. This expectation can poison relationships, breeding silent resentment when people fail to meet the standard we set through our actions. Kindness, when driven by the hope of reciprocity, becomes transactional rather than genuine, and it erodes the peace of mind that Stoicism encourages us to cultivate. Kindness can also quietly diminish our ability to assert our own worth. When we're overly kind, constantly putting others first, we might begin to believe that our value lies solely in what we can offer others. This mindset can make us hesitate to speak up for our needs or desires, fearing that doing so would make us seem selfish or unkind. Over time, we may begin to feel as though we don't deserve to take up space or to prioritize our own aspirations. This can lead to a deep-seated insecurity, where our self-worth is tied to our role as a helper. Stoicism teaches us to value ourselves independently of external validation, yet kindness can seduce us into thinking that our worth is conditional on our generosity. This self-sacrificing tendency can ultimately prevent us from pursuing our goals, shrinking our lives to fit within the confines of other people's needs. In some cases, kindness can become a barrier to making necessary changes. If we're deeply compassionate, we might avoid making decisions that would disrupt other people's lives, even when those decisions are essential for our own growth. For instance, we might stay in a job or a relationship that no longer fulfills us simply because we don't want to cause anyone discomfort or disappointment. This form of kindness traps us, keeping us in situations that hinder our progress, all to spare others from the discomfort of change. By trying to be kind to others, we deny ourselves the chance to evolve and achieve our full potential. This stagnation can lead to long-term dissatisfaction as we become prisoners of our own compassion. Stoicism encourages us to embrace change as a natural part of life, yet kindness can create a reluctance to disrupt the status quo, leaving us stuck in places that no longer serve us. Furthermore, an unchecked kindness can hinder our ability to make tough decisions. Sometimes, out of a desire to be compassionate, we may avoid making difficult choices that are necessary for the greater good. For example, a manager might hesitate to give honest feedback to an employee out of kindness, or a leader might shy away from enforcing boundaries to avoid causing discomfort. But by avoiding these hard choices, we fail to provide the clarity and structure that others may need to grow. In the short term, this kindness may seem merciful, but in the long run, it prevents others from receiving constructive guidance that could help them improve. This reluctance to face hard truths dilutes our effectiveness as we prioritize short-term comfort over long-term growth. Stoicism teaches us the importance of courage and honesty, yet a misguided kindness often tempts us to soften reality, making it harder for others and ourselves to confront and grow through challenges. One last way kindness can sabotage us is by blurring our sense of responsibility. While being kind and supportive is admirable, we sometimes take on other people's problems as if they were our own, feeling compelled to fix their issues or rescue them from their difficulties. While helping others is noble, constantly assuming responsibility for their challenges can weigh us down with burdens that aren't ours to carry. We end up spreading ourselves too thin, giving away energy that could be directed toward our own growth and responsibilities. This over-involvement can prevent others from developing resilience and problem-solving skills, as they come to rely on our assistance rather than facing their struggles independently. Stoicism encourages us to recognize the limits of our control, yet kindness can blur these boundaries, leading us to take on roles and responsibilities that aren't ours. Each of these dynamics demonstrates how kindness, though inherently good, can twist into something that limits our well-being and growth, if not tempered with wisdom. True kindness respects both others and ourselves, allowing us to give thoughtfully without losing our balance, principles, or sense of self. In exploring the many ways kindness can inadvertently sabotage our lives, we uncover a complex truth. Even the most well-intentioned actions can have unintended consequences if they are not grounded in balance and self-awareness. Kindness, when paired with discernment, is a powerful tool that brings joy, fosters connection, and builds resilience in ourselves and others. But without boundaries, this same kindness can lead us to self-sacrifice, create unrealistic expectations, and blur the lines of responsibility, ultimately hindering both our growth and that of the people around us. In our journey toward understanding kindness, we often assume it's a straightforward path, a virtue that can only bring good into our lives. Yet, as we've explored today, kindness, like any powerful force, can have a double edge. When we look at kindness through the lens of Stoicism, it becomes clear that without balance and discernment, even the most well-intentioned acts can lead us into hidden pitfalls. Kindness that is too giving can lead to burnout, while kindness that avoids confrontation can undermine our integrity and self-respect. Over time, if we're not careful, kindness can turn into a habit that causes us to sacrifice our own well-being, weaken our boundaries, and compromise our principles. Stoicism teaches us to live in harmony with our true values, grounded in reason and resilience. It doesn't ask us to abandon kindness, but instead urges us to wield it wisely. Real kindness means understanding when to help and when to step back, recognizing that not every problem is ours to solve. It's about being there for others without losing ourselves, maintaining our values while showing compassion. True kindness uplifts others without creating dependence, respects boundaries, and isn't afraid to speak the truth, even if it's uncomfortable. By practicing kindness with clarity and purpose, we can preserve both our own peace and the integrity of our relationships, becoming a positive force without falling into the traps of overgiving or self-neglect. In a world where kindness is often held up as an unquestionable virtue, it's essential to step back and consider how even our best intentions can sometimes lead us astray. Kindness, when practiced with discernment and wisdom, can truly enrich our lives and the lives of those around us. But if we allow it to go unchecked, if we're constantly giving without setting boundaries, sacrificing our own needs, or blurring the lines between compassion and enabling, kindness can slowly chip away at our well-being. We risk becoming overwhelmed, disconnected from our sense of self, or even unintentionally hindering the growth and resilience of others. Stoicism offers us a valuable lens through which to view kindness as a balanced virtue that respects both others and ourselves, encouraging us to give thoughtfully while staying true to our values and needs. In striving for true kindness, we need to embrace honesty, courage, and boundaries. It's about understanding that saying no can sometimes be the most compassionate choice for everyone involved, that we don't have to sacrifice our own growth to support others, and that genuine kindness doesn't require us to take on burdens that aren't ours to carry. True kindness empowers both the giver and the receiver, creating a foundation for growth, respect, and balanced relationships. By being mindful of how and why we extend ourselves to others, we can transform our acts of kindness into gestures that truly uplift without compromising our peace of mind or our integrity. When we let kindness dictate our choices without critical thought, we risk falling into patterns that drain us, prevent necessary change, or make us overly dependent on others' validation. True kindness should empower, not exhaust. It should nurture relationships without causing resentment or diminishing our sense of self-worth. The Stoic approach encourages us to approach kindness with wisdom, to be mindful of our motivations, and to act in a way that aligns with our own principles. By doing so, we avoid the pitfalls of kindness and cultivate a balance where generosity and self-respect can coexist. As we reflect on how kindness fits into our lives, let's remember that our value is not defined solely by what we give to others. Setting healthy boundaries, staying true to our principles, and recognizing when it's time to put our own needs first are all acts of self-kindness that enable us to be truly present and compassionate in the long run. By practicing kindness with clarity and intention, we allow it to enrich our lives rather than lead us astray. If you found this perspective on kindness enlightening, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay connected with more insights on Stoicism and the path to a balanced, fulfilling life. Your support helps us continue to bring meaningful content to you, and we look forward to exploring more transformative ideas together. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you in the next video.